We want to say Kyle Rittenhouse is not just any random killer. He's a white supremacist killer. He is a vigilante. He's a descendant of white Americans who killed black and brown people. And those white supremacists back in the day were also acquitted of all charges if we have read history. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't get a guilty verdict because he was fucking white.
Hey! Shut the fuck up, man.
Let's go, Brandon! Let's go, Brandon!
Let's go, Brandon, indeed. The woke left is absolutely melting down over the Kyle Rittenhouse acquittal, and now their so-called experts are claiming that we can expect bloodshed to follow from the verdict. That's right. In this video, we're going to see the latest panic from the leftists over at Salon.com. We're going to see how they view the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict, and stick with me to the very end of this video when I'll show you that these leftists are indeed admitting that their days in political power are numbered. You are not gonna want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. I am your daily fake news antidote. As each and every day I provide patriotic analysis to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we begin, it is Christmas time, the most wonderful time of year, and what could possibly be a better gift for the patriots in your life than Mike Lindell's MyPillow products, gang. They're the best. I sleep in the best sheets and best pillows every single night. And this Christmas, Mike and his company are offering the lowest prices in their history with promo code Turley. Now get this. Their classic MyPillow is usually $69.98. Now it's only $19.98 if you use my code Turley. In fact, you could use that code for savings on over 200 products for your family and friends this Christmas. So don't wait. Click on that link below to support Mike. He's a patriot. We love him. And let's give the patriots in your life the gift of the best sleep imaginable. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. The leftists over at Salon.com are hyperventilating again. They're panicked. They're melting down over the prospects of a new wave of right-wing violence flooding the nation coming from the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse several days back in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Now, again, I want to keep in mind here, I want you to keep in mind that these leftists had absolutely no problem whatsoever with those fiery but supposedly mostly peaceful protests that engulfed our nation's cities a year ago last summer. Riots that caused upwards of $2 billion in damages. They had absolutely no issue whatsoever with the 18 senseless deaths and countless injuries that happened as a result. Now, all of that was in the name of a Marxist-inspired notion of social justice. And violence is allowed then. Because violence, in that case, is the legitimate expression of the power of the people, blah, blah, blah. But a 17-year-old kid defending himself, and again, keep in mind, against 3 white dudes trying to kill him, somehow in the world of woke leftists, somehow that is the epitome of white supremacism that right now as we speak is unleashing a torrent of right-wing militia-style violence on our nation. Welcome to the world of wokeism, but I digress. Here's how the article starts. You're going to absolutely love this. Quote, Democrats are being encircled by a radicalized Republican Party increasingly committed to fascism. Instead of organizing their forces and launching a coordinated counterattack, the Democrats are fighting many battles at once and losing most of them. Fascist militias and other right-wing paramilitaries are growing in strength and numbers. Domestic terrorism experts are warning that the U.S. may experience a prolonged violent right-wing insurgency. Some observers have suggested that such right-wing extremist violence could even escalate into a second American Civil War. Republicans are systematically restricting black and brown people's right to vote with the apparent goal of creating a new apartheid Jim Crow-style system where the Democrats will effectively never win free and fair elections. This plot against democracy involves voter exclusion, voter suppression, extreme gerrymandering, the big lie, and intimidation of election officials on the local level. Now, this whole uproar among Democrats against Republican gerrymandering where you withdraw the congressional districts around voter registrations. That basically guarantees the perpetual election of a particular party in power. It's pure projection. The Democrats are as guilty as sin when it comes to gerrymandering. They're just pissed because the Republicans have overwhelmingly won elections at the state level where all the gerrymandering takes place, okay? Political parties gerrymander, and the Democrats are just whining here because the Republicans have won the vast majority of state legislatures that get to do just that. So this is utterly pathetic, and it just shows what a bunch of sniveling losers these leftist activists really are. The left-wing panic continues, quote, Republicans are also deploying their street thugs and other foot soldiers to disrupt civil society, targeting school board meetings, library oversight boards, and other ground-level government bodies. These attacks involve both violent intimidation and a proactive strategy to infiltrate local government and weaponize it in service to the Republican fascist movement. What? Does that sound confident to you? This is how leftists are talking amongst each other. They're panicked. Whether it's the Durham indictments over the Russia hoax, whether it's the elections in Virginia and New Jersey, whether it's the Kyle Rittenhouse acquittal, they are panicked. They see Joe Biden collapsing in the polls. They see Kamala Harris faring even worse. They see Manchin and Sinema playing Judases, and they don't see anything other than their own world coming crashing down. Okay, so this Salon.com article goes on to interview someone who is billed as a, quote, expert on right-wing extremism, a fellow by the name of David Nywart or whatever. And when you read the interview, it becomes readily apparent that this so-called expert is just another woke leftist. His only expertise is in advocating a far-left Marxist worldview. But what I find so fascinating about this interview is just how revealing it is in terms of how it says more about leftists than it does about the reality of things with regard to our current state of politics. So, for example, take a look at the opening question of this interview. Here's how the interview started. Quote, given the state of America and the climate of escalating political tension and violence, why were so many people surprised by the Rittenhouse verdict? Now, wait a minute. Who here among you were, quote, surprised by the Rittenhouse verdict? I did at least 2 videos several weeks before the verdict that any objective person would conclude that Kyle acted in total self-defense, and that the most likely scenario was that the jury was going to acquit him on all, well, at that time it was 6 charges. One of them got dropped. This wasn't surprising for any of us who were actually following the trial. The prosecution was a joke. My namesake Jonathan Turley argued that the chief prosecutor, Binger, was a textbook case of how not to prosecute a case. How could anyone have been surprised by that verdict? The obvious answer, at least here, is that you have to be infected with woke leftism. But here's the part that the so-called here's his response, this expert. Quote, I was concerned there was not going to be a chance for a fair trial because the judge had precluded the most relevant evidence in the case, which is that Kyle Rittenhouse was deeply radicalized by far-right propaganda about militias and their support of vigilantism. Now, if you watched the Tucker Carlson interview last week, I think the last thing that you would think of when listening to Kyle Rittenhouse was that he was radicalized. Let me tell you what radicalized looks like. This is radicalization, okay? This fiery but mostly peaceful notion of riots. This inability to even acknowledge the existence of a series of riots in Kenosha that caused upwards of $50 million worth of damages. That is radicalization, which means that this so-called expert is the true radical nut here. And here's all the proof you need. He goes on to say this, quote, the Rittenhouse verdict is going to be a big green light and beacon for the right-wing extremists, and especially the Patriot right. It's just a big signal. You can do this and get away with it. You could gun down leftists at these protests. That's what Kyle was facing that night. That's what Kyle was disrupting. Kyle disrupted protests. I defy anyone to watch those videos from that fateful night and with any semblance of reason and with a straight face actually try to make the legitimate claim that Kyle was in the midst of, quote, protests. The entire interview is nothing more than a parody of repulsiveness, but it is revealing. The left, the far left, really is panicking that the world is closing in on them. Their hopes and their dreams for a socialist utopia are dying more and more with each passing day. And the Kyle Rittenhouse acquittal was but the latest reminder that their days in power are indeed coming to an end. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video on how the left is losing even Bill Maher. You need to watch how Maher shuts down a far leftist on critical race theory. It's going to absolutely make your day. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.